The garage where it all began. Some stories begin in castles, some on battlefields, and some in laboratories filled with flashing lights and polished instruments. But the story of Jeff Bezos, one of the most influential entrepreneurs of the modern age, begins in a far more modest place, a garage. This garage had no glittering chandeliers, no secret treasures, and no hint of what it would one day represent. It was a simple suburban space, bare walls, a concrete floor, and a roll-up door that let in the hot summer air of Seattle. Yet inside this quiet, unremarkable room, a company was born that would change the way people shop, read, and even think about technology itself. Amazon did not appear overnight, fully formed. It grew slowly, through long hours of work, uncertainty and experimentation. But to understand the road that led to that garage, and everything that has happened since, we need to go much further back in time, to the childhood of a boy who loved to build, to tinker and to dream. Childhood and family. Jeffrey Preston Bezos was born on January 12, 1964 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the southwestern United States. His life did not begin in luxury or privilege. In fact, his beginnings were rather humble. His mother, Jacqueline Gies, was only 17 years old when she gave birth to him. At the time, she was still a high school student, trying to finish her education while suddenly facing the enormous responsibility of motherhood. His biological father, Ted Jorgensen, was a bike shop owner. Their marriage was brief and did not last long. Within just over a year after Jeff's birth, his parents had divorced. For the young Jacqueline, raising a child alone was not easy. But her life took a new turn when she met Miguel Mike Bezos, a Cuban immigrant who had fled his home country as a teenager during political unrest. Mike came to the United States with very little. He barely spoke English and had to rebuild his life from the ground up. Yet, he carried with him resilience and determination, qualities that would become central to Jeff's upbringing. When Jacqueline married Mike, he formally adopted Jeff, giving him the surname Bezos. From then on, Jeff Jorgensen became Jeff Bezos, a name that would one day be known across the globe. Jeff's family moved frequently during his early childhood. Eventually they settled in Houston, Texas, where Mike worked as an engineer for Exxon. Houston was also home to NASA's Johnson Space Center, and though Jeff was still very young, the environment around him was buzzing with the spirit of the space age. Rockets, astronauts, and dreams of the moon landing were part of the culture in Texas during the late 1960s. This atmosphere would deeply influence Jeff's imagination. Even as a little boy, Jeff showed signs of being unusually curious and inventive. His mother later recalled that Jeff would take apart his crib with a screwdriver because he preferred to sleep in a regular bed. He would dismantle household appliances just to see how they worked, and then carefully try to put them back together. These were the earliest glimpses of his engineering mindset, the same curiosity and persistence that decades later would fuel the creation of Amazon and even rocket ships. His grandfather, Lawrence Preston Gies, also played a huge role in his childhood. Lawrence worked as a regional director at the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, and after retirement, he lived on a ranch in Texas. Jeff spent many of his summers there, working alongside his grandfather, fixing windmills, repairing machinery, and solving practical problems of ranch life. This hands-on experience gave Jeff not only technical skills, but also a sense of independence and confidence in tackling challenges. From his earliest days, Jeff lived in a world that combined resilience, curiosity, and a love for building. These qualities, rooted in his family's story, his young mother's courage, his father's engineering discipline, and his grandfather's resourcefulness, would form the foundation of everything he would go on to achieve. Early interests in science and space. As Jeff Bezos grew older, his curiosity only deepened. Unlike many children who quickly lose interest in their early fascinations, Jeff's desire to understand how things worked stayed with him. His family recalls that he was the type of boy who preferred spending hours with books, gadgets, and experiments instead of casual play. By the time he was in elementary school, Jeff had already discovered his fascination with science and technology. He was captivated by how machines operated, how electricity powered objects, and how the universe itself seemed full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. During this time, the space race was in full swing. The 1960s and early 1970s were years when the United States and the Soviet Union were competing to explore the stars. When Jeff was just 5 years old in 1969, the Apollo 11 mission landed the first humans on the moon. Even though he was too young to remember every detail, the cultural atmosphere of that momentous event seeped into his environment. America was buzzing with talk of astronauts, rockets, and possibilities beyond Earth. In Houston, living not far from NASA, the excitement of space exploration was almost impossible to ignore. Scientists and engineers were national heroes, and the idea that humanity could expand beyond its home planet left a lasting impression on young Jeff. This early exposure planted a seed that would one day grow into his lifelong passion for space travel and exploration. At school, Jeff's teachers quickly noticed his intelligence and his unusual focus. He was not only academically gifted but also highly determined. For example, when he wanted to build a science project, he would not settle for something simple. He often took on challenges far above the level expected for his age. One of the most memorable examples of his early creativity came when Jeff turned his parents' garage into a laboratory and workshop. He filled it with his science projects, electrical contraptions, and mechanical experiments. Sometimes he made alarms to keep his younger siblings out. Other times he experimented with computers and gadgets. This transformation of a garage into a lab was symbolic. Years later, another garage would host the beginnings of Amazon. But already as a boy, Jeff demonstrated that a simple space, when combined with imagination and effort, could become the birthplace of something extraordinary. His intellectual abilities and drive eventually led him to attend Miami Palmetto Senior High School in Florida, after the family moved once again. There, Jeff excelled academically. He was valedictorian of his class, the student with the highest achievements, and gave a graduation speech that reflected his early vision of the future. In his speech, Jeff famously spoke about building colonies in space where millions of people could live. He dreamed of humanity expanding beyond Earth, not as a fantasy, but as a practical goal. These ideas might have sounded unusual for a teenager in the early 1980s, but they revealed how serious Jeff was about long-term thinking. While many of his peers focused on the immediate future, jobs, colleges, social life, Jeff was already imagining solutions for challenges that might face civilization in the coming centuries. His teenage years showed a consistent pattern: a mind fascinated by science, a passion for discovery, and a willingness to dream big, while also putting in the hard work needed to pursue those dreams. By the time Jeff was ready to enter university, he had already built a strong foundation. The influence of his grandfather's ranch, the exposure to NASA and space culture in Houston, his own experiments in the garage, and his bold vision of humanity's future. This combination set the stage for the next chapter of his life, one that would take him to one of the world's most prestigious universities and ultimately closer to the skills he needed to change the world: education and Princeton years. By the early 1980s, Jeff Bezos had matured into a teenager whose curiosity and ambition were already exceptional. His academic excellence in high school had earned him numerous awards, scholarships, and recognition. But beyond grades and accolades, he had developed a habit of thinking deeply about the future, about technology, and about systems, whether mechanical, digital, or societal. In 1982, after graduating from Miami Palmetto Senior High School as valedictorian, Jeff faced the next significant step in his life: higher education. He applied to some of the nation's top universities, seeking a place where he could combine his fascination for technology with a rigorous academic environment. He ultimately enrolled at Princeton University in New Jersey, one of the world's most prestigious institutions, renowned for both its academic excellence and its encouragement of independent thinking. At Princeton, Jeff pursued a dual focus: electrical engineering and computer science. From the beginning, he immersed himself in the rigorous curriculum. Electrical engineering gave him a solid foundation in understanding how devices, circuits, and systems worked. Computer science, still a relatively new field in the early 1980s, allowed him to engage with emerging technologies, programming languages, algorithms, and data structures that would later form the core of many technological innovations. Jeff's professors described him as highly focused and disciplined. He was not content to merely pass exams or complete assignments. He sought to understand deeply. In lectures, he would ask questions that often went beyond the immediate topic, probing the theoretical and practical implications of technology. In labs, he could spend hours experimenting, testing code, and creating small projects that reflected his desire to apply knowledge practically. During his time at Princeton, Jeff also demonstrated a remarkable ability to plan for the long term. While many students were focused on internships or summer jobs, he was already thinking strategically about careers that would allow him to combine technology, business, and innovation. He sought opportunities that would challenge him, and he excelled in roles that required both technical skill and analytical thinking. In addition to his academic pursuits, Jeff displayed early entrepreneurial instincts. He worked on side projects, tinkering with software and hardware, often exploring ways to make processes more efficient or solve real-world problems. These projects, while small, foreshadowed his later ventures, the understanding that even modest experiments could be the starting point for something much larger. In 1986, Jeff graduated from Princeton with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering, officially recognized for his studies in electrical engineering and computer science. His time at Princeton had not only given him technical expertise, but also instilled a confidence in his own intellectual abilities. He had learned to think critically, solve problems, and envision possibilities that others might consider impractical or impossible. It was at this point that Jeff faced a critical decision: what to do with the knowledge, skills and ambition he had accumulated. Many of his classmates pursued stable paths in engineering, consulting or finance. Jeff, however, was driven by a desire to innovate and create something impactful. This decision led him first to the world of Wall Street, where he would gain invaluable experience in finance, technology and business strategy. It was here that the foundations for Amazon would slowly begin to take shape, not yet as a company, but as an idea, nurtured by knowledge, observation and ambition.